Well, hello, friends, and welcome into Rates and Barrels right here on The Athletic. I am Chris Welsh, who you can find on Twitter. That is Eno Saris on Twitter at Eno Saris as well. Look at us. We're here today to talk to you about some prospects. It's Project Prospect, if you will. We are going to be talking about guys that were optioned but not counted out. There's also some still in-camp surprises that we've got to get to you. So lots of prospect talk, even though we're in like a weird space of time before prospect things are going to really kick off because there's all these minor league things going on. Plus, Mr. Eno Saris, how about an incredible WBC game that we had last night where Japan came back, and now we are getting Japan versus USA tonight as we are recording this. I am pretty excited, my friend.
Yeah, yesterday was such a back and forth affair that I was just was just really fun and riveting. I thought all the way to the end. Just looking at Shohei Ohtani celebrating on second was just another example of how into it these players are. I loved Randy Arozarena mean mugging after he stole that homer. I loved him signing autographs while the game was on.
It's amazing. Let me ask you something. What is more iconic in your mind, the Adam Jones catch or the Randy Arozarena mean mug?
I think the actual play goes to Jones because he was further up and stole, more likely a homer. Randy's was somewhere in between a double and a homer and not quite as high in the air, but the mean mug, the celebration afterwards goes to Arozarena. And we were joking about it because the kids are in Little League and my younger son, just an update on him because he's the troll son that was rooting for Cuba the night before, was rooting for Japan last night. And we went cleat shopping. He bought white cleats. So just a little bit of a window into his personality as well. So he really loved the Randy Arozarena stuff. And I did have to point out that maybe his coach doesn't love him as much as other people. He's out there in cowboy boots and a sombrero during shagging flies. I don't know. Maybe his coach loves him. His coach probably loves the production, but like a little league coach would not love my kid running around in cowboy boots in the outfield.
So I didn't realize the level of troll, not just Japan, but also was going for Cuba. So this is just a pure, it's kind of an underdog. Maybe not even just a troll. He's an underdog guy.
No, it's the rest of the family is rooting for this, and I'm going to root for this other thing.
All right, that's a child. That's a true child. Like, oh, what do you guys want? No, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. It was pretty easy to root for Japan watching Roki Sasaki last night. It was real. I mean, getting eyes on like full game action really put into perspective so much of what this guy was all about. On paper, the stats didn't necessarily like jump out. It was 4 innings, 3 earned runs. He gave up a homer, big homer to Luis Urias, and only 3 strikeouts. But behind the scenes, you really saw everything that this guy was about, hitting 102. And I had this audible, where I was like, okay, like when he threw this 92-mile-an-hour splitter that had preceded the 102 fastball, I thought it was like a slider because it had so much action. And it was really interesting too, because he seems to be able to have different variations of that same splitter. He can do different stuff with it, which I thought was really sneaky. Kind of like how some guys will do, a slider. Sometimes it'll bite. Sometimes it might just cut down. Like he had different ways he could throw it while pumping huge, huge fastballs. So I was really curious on your take of what you saw out of Roki Sasaki.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just a it's like, what is this?
Like someone dumping like cold water on you. You're like,
yeah,
whoa,
what?
Yeah.
And then like Luis Urias took a splitter deep, and I had my inner Nick Pollock in my ear, where he's over at Pitcher List, and he talks about pitchers not really being able to command the splitter. Just because of the way you're gripping it is, it's coming off your weaker fingers, or it's coming out from between 2 fingers. I agree with him. It's probably not a pitch you can command that well. I generally don't think pitchers command all their pitches as much as they throw them hard and towards large areas. so I'm generally more pro splitter than he is. There's also the risk of injury that people talk about with splitters, because if you actually hold the ball, if you really widen your fingers like this, you'll feel your flexor tendon. If you just feel at the bottom of your elbow, you'll feel there's a tendon actually that you can maybe see it sometimes.
Ball right here.
Get activated. And the flexor tendon is part of a group of ligaments and tendons that protect your UCL. So the idea is that if you do that too much, you're activating a muscle that would otherwise be protecting your UCL. I don't know if I believe that. It makes a little bit of sense intuitively, but I don't think it's been really proven. There has been, of course, a link between high velo and stress on the elbow. That is directly proven.
Well,
and so
watching him
if you
last
wanted
night,
to wait for Roki Sasaki in your fantasy league for 4 years, you may have to wait through a TJ or something. I mean, I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying throwing that hard is stressful on your arm.
That was one of the first comments I saw, because, you know, I put a tweet out about the fastball and the splitter and having to wait on him. And one of the first things was it's going to be really great once you can get him post Tommy John, because like, I don't necessarily disagree. Watching him, his total arm action it's not violent at all. It's just, there's a lot of like things that are going on with it that don't seem, he can repeat it, but it seems like, ooh, you're putting a little bit extra stress on the arm in general. Plus you're throwing 102. Plus you've got a splitter, which you're talking about might be a little bit more prone to injury. All those things kind of don't feel great long term, but he's a 21-year-old kid. Maybe it never happens. Maybe if it does, it happens early. That's the selfish way we could all look at it before he gets to the majors. But yeah, on camera, I have a baseball here. I was trying to do it. Yeah, the splitter doesn't really feel good. I don't know how I'm supposed to. I don't know how these guys can do it.
And some guys don't even have the hands for it. I mean, that's what Alex Cobb was telling me. He's teaching his pitch to everybody, and some guys just didn't have the hands for it. But also, some more news about tonight. Shota Imanaga is actually starting tonight, and that was a revelation from our first show this week, that he led the WBC in Stuff Plus when I ran that stat. That's not the full sample of everybody, but it's still an eye-opener. And the fact that they chose him over Yu Darvish, another eye-opener. And then the bonus was from our Monday show, 29 years old. And I believe from checking his contract status, a lot of it was in Japanese. Some of it was translated for me. I believe he's been signing like 1-year deals. And if that is the case, we could see Shota Imanaga next year. Apologies for acting like I had stumbled upon Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He's a known entity in your open universe leagues. He's probably gone. He is in mine. He's going to post next year. I think he will immediately become a top 50 pitcher, just as I had Kodai Senga this year. So that's not a big gem for you. But in my apologies for Yoshinobu Yamamoto is a reaffirmation that Shota Imanaga could come as close as next year, because he's 29 years old, and that he could be the kind of sneaky good acquisition, and he is probably actually available in your open universe league. So still got you something good there, and there's going to be something fun tonight because Imanaga is on this list. It's a little bit of a nod towards how Stuff Plus says that shapes can be as important as velo, because Imanaga does not throw 100 like Sasaki. He's much more modest velo, but it's just really good shape on the fastball, and I think the secondaries really stand out. So that could be a type of pitcher that a good scouting team that knows everything about the rim, or just watches tonight. He could pitch his way into an American contract tonight.
It's a good point. And also, we might see them go him to Darvish to Ohtani. That might be the 3-run we see tonight.
They're being kind of cagey with the Ohtani availability. If they want me, I'm available, but, I don't know. There's something sort of cagey about his. I wonder if they're playing games, a little bit of gamesmanship there, and he's not actually available. There's all these rules that we are not access to that come from their teams. The Angels can say Ohtani can't pitch tonight.
And that might be done with. Last thing on Sasaki real quick, just looking at his numbers. One thing I don't think I realized, and it was probably because the different movement that was going on with the splitter and how he was manipulating it. Like I said, the first one I saw almost looked like a slider that bent out, and he could just push it around and push the fastball. But in that game, he was theoretically a 2-pitch pitcher. He threw 40, where did it go here? 45% fastball, 47% splitter, which left a 8% slider. So it was essentially
I did see a couple
pitcher.
of those, 87 miles an hour. Didn't look like he had great command of it. It didn't have an amazing shape, but at 87 miles an hour, it's probably a good slider too. If he comes to America, I wouldn't be surprised that they up the slider usage.
5 he threw. He did get 2 swings and 1 whiff on it. Pretty crazy numbers as well. He had 33 swings on his 64 pitches, 12 of which were whiffs, and whiff percentage of over 50% on both the splitter and the slider, and the CSW percentage of 43% on the splitter, 30%, 31% on the fastball. Just like absurd numbers across the board. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see him being like a 2-pitch pitcher, electric stuff. But repeating again, we will not see him until 2027 because I cannot see a scenario, even
or
though
6, because they would post him for money. So maybe 6 or 5. Maybe they feel like they get more money if they post him in 6 or 5.
Well, but he's not eligible to break the rookie restrictions. See, that's the problem. Is like I even heard the broadcasters trying to push, like, we got to find a way to get him over here. The only way to get him over is to change the rules, because if you're under 25, you are eligible to the international restrictions, and you just can't imagine a guy like this, especially their teams, would allow him, knowing the money they're going to get back by posting. It's crazy.
It's just it's a false restriction on. I mean, if you're a prospect in the minor leagues and you're 24 years old, you're barely a prospect, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you're still in the minor leagues, there's some guys that have that designation, but I would change that rule. Make it 23.
I would too. 21. 20. It should be 21 and up. You're open, because also on the international side, how many guys do we see that are under or that are over 21 even sign big international deals? We don't. Luis Robert was under.
That's 21. The whole. Right. The whole idea behind the Astros pitching staff is that those guys were old and they did sign at 21, but they got $5,000 and $10,000. Javier, Urquidy, Fromber, they got small bonuses because they were too old, and they were too old at like 19, 20, 21.
Yeah. Oscar Colas, same thing, waited out, but it's still, I think it was under 21. Luis Morales just signed with the Oakland A's. He's probably the oldest guy in this international class that just signed out of Cuba. 20 years old. So I don't know why we don't have a 21-year-old deal and above, and that would help. That would kind of bridge that gap for international guys. And
it must be Japan. It must be Japan.
It's got to be
the only place. The only place where there are high dollar guys between 21 and 24 is Japan.
And it's bad business for baseball. Like the best thing you could do is bring Roki Sasaki to the MLB right now.
Well, it'd be great for business for NPB. Maybe they lobbied baseball to change that number.
There's a possibility. That's interesting. Okay, so WBC, USA, Japan tonight. We know who Eno's kids have rooting for, but the rest of us,
I'm rooting for Imanaga just because I'm rooting for the Stuff Plus.
I mean, I want to see him be good.
No.
I have a team future on USA, so I'm definitely Team USA.
Oh, really?
If not for obvious reasons. By the way, I got a little skin in the game here, so I'm going for Team USA for outside.
Well,
of
it helps when you put a Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer in the lineup. My God.
Goldschmidt, Arenado, Betts, Trout. If only that pitching staff was better. But hey, my local Merrill Kelly going to be doing the starting out there. I'm excited about that. All right, let's get into Project Prospect here. And there's a lot of different ways we've been attacking prospects. We've been looking at them from the perspective of really interesting names for redraft. We've talked first-year player. We've done that. We're now in that bridge gap period where spring training has a week left. AAA is going to start in about a week and a half. AA and down is going to start in 2 weeks. The season's just about here. So teams have been sending guys down, and we've had some disappointments. We definitely a couple disappointments on my side as well from a couple players. So first up here, these are option prospects, but not counted out. And the idea behind this is, yes, they were optioned, but how far are they really going to be away? And I'm going to start it off with a guy that I did bring up yesterday because the news was a little bit fresh, but Brandon Pfaadt with my Arizona Diamondbacks. Brandon Pfaadt had a 3.75 ERA, which was better than Ryan Nelson, better than Dre Jameson. He was the best of those starters, 15 strikeouts in 12 innings, and he had a 1 whip. It really wasn't even close. And I thought he was going to get that gig. Dre Jameson, maybe to the bullpen. but the Arizona Diamondbacks option Brandon Pfaadt out. Dre Jameson is still in the hunt. This is a Nelson or Dre Jameson gig here, but I'm curious at how long do you think Brandon Pfaadt is really out for? I know we briefly talked about this yesterday, and that I don't think this is going to be for too long. And how many struggles will the team really sit on? But he's optioned, but I just don't know if it's for too long. So talk to me about Brandon Pfaadt and overall what you thought about his spring. I don't remember, maybe it was weeks and weeks ago, you were kind of breaking down some of his stuff compared to Nelson and them. But what do you think about Brandon Pfaadt?
I think he's probably pretty close, but I wonder how what's the corresponding move? Because you've got a roster, and you don't, teams for the most part don't want to lose anything off their roster, any potential value. They want to sneak it in. So a real easy way for Pfaadt to come up is Bumgarner goes on a long-term IL, right? Because long-term IL, you open up basically a roster cycle, 60-day DL, you open 68-day IL, you open up a roster spot on your 40-man roster. Boom, Pfaadt is in, and he comes up, and that's an easy sort of that's the corresponding move. But what if Davies is just kind of poopy? Do you just drop him? Do you move him to the bullpen, and then you have to drop somebody out of the bullpen? They're trying to, put together a bullpen that can be competitive. Justin Martinez needs a roster spot if he's going to be in this bullpen. He throws 100 miles an hour, and that's exciting. But, if you put him on the roster spot, you got to drop Juris Familia or, somebody.
Miguel Castro. Yeah, no, they do have a lot of names they brought in. Yeah.
So it's always about the corresponding move, and I'm just not sure what it is yet. And they don't want to give up on Ryan Nelson. And I think this last start showed you that Ryan Nelson still has it in him. I know it was Colorado, but Colorado's lineup is improving. And he got 6 strikeouts against 1 walk and 4 hits in 4 2/3. Looked as good of a tune-up as you could expect out of him. And so I still think, I know the doubt is creeping in, but I still think it's Nelson's job. And I just wonder what the corresponding move is for Pfaadt. I mean, maybe Davies is so bad that he's easy to release, or maybe Bum gets hurt in a way that we know exactly what's going to happen. So that's the use case. But while you still have Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen, Bumgarner, Davies, and Nelson and Jameson, if they're all healthy, I don't see how Pfaadt comes up and just takes a job, because it means they have to lose something off their roster. They just have to release somebody.
Okay, so let me ask you then. So
you're rooting against Zach Davies, I think.
Which is it's very easy to do. And I can't imagine it's going to stay in the rotation super long, and I think he'd be a better bullpen arm. Let me ask you this then. Brandon Pfaadt, most really statistically prolific pitcher last year, puts up 167 innings. 167 innings across 2 levels. 61 of those were in the PCL.
Man, it's more than Davies put up last year.
How much do the Diamondbacks and Brandon Pfaadt benefit from him pitching in the PCL when he's succeeding? If he is out there in the PCL and he's performing well again, what benefit is it for them to keep him down if you have mediocre returns from Ryan Nelson and Davies? So I'm just curious that you're making great points about the bullpen and everything like that, but what is the true benefit if he is your second or third best pitcher in your entire organization and he's killing it again? He's not learning anything down there. And I guess at the end of the day, you're talking about the expense of another player, is maybe you just option Ryan Nelson and you bring him up. I just wonder how long they'll really wait, and how long do you think they would hold him down?
If Ryan Nelson struggles, I guess that's easy. But then you might have Dre Jameson, right? So is there a pecking order? I mean, honestly, I'm actually looking a little bit at Madison Bumgarner's page right now, because, they've got this year and next year, right? So you open the season with him. But let's say he had a 4.88 ERA last year. He was actually with 0.5 wins, like a half a win in 158 innings. That's really close to replacement level for a starting pitcher. You know what I mean? all pitchers' replacement level is much lower than that, of course. But for a starting pitcher, do you know that the average fifth starter is like 1.5 wins, right?
And he was
So
what? Point
0.5. He was a half a win. So in 2021, he was a 1.5. That's a fine fifth starter. But last year, he dropped his strikeout rate even further, and he had the second worst swing strike rate of his career. And he had one of the worst home run rates of his career. So you add that all up, and it adds to barely being any good. Like Pfaadt could be better than Bumgarner this year.
Would be better.
Yeah. And so you start. So yeah. So if he starts out, if Bumgarner starts out and does the same sort of thing in this year, well, then he doesn't have any trade value, right? He doesn't have, you're not like, you'd have to actually attach a prospect to get rid of the money, right?
Yeah, the old Bronson Arroyo trade,
right? And I don't think they're in the business of doing that. So let me see here. I'm looking.
What do you think is more important to them, real quick? What do you think is more important? What they're going to stare at, the financials or the analytics of like fifth starter versus replacement value? Is that more important, or is it going to be the financials for maybe anybody you've spoken with that team?
Well, I mean, the financials here. What I'm saying is, it's a sunk cost. You owe Madison Bumgarner the money, and so it actually becomes more about the analytics of his value. Like, what do you think his value is? So far this spring, 6 1/3 with 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, and 4 walks. It's borderline, man. If he's gonna walk, 1 for every strikeout, then you say, well, Pfaadt is better. We owe Bumgarner the money either way. And he's not going to take a demotion to the bullpen. So
no way.
Vaya con Dios.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. A lot of people have brought that up to me, and I'm like, there is no chance in hell that he would take a demotion to the bullpen. He would rather stay home. There's no way he ever goes.
He's projected for less than a half a win by most of the systems. He's projected to have a 4.95 ERA, basically, collectively by all the systems. So, yeah. So, okay, that's the use case for me. Bumgarner, They give Bumgarner the first few starts, 2 through maybe the first month. And if he's got a 4.9 ERA and, he's striking out 6 per 9 and walking 4 per 9, why you're not going to get any trade value out of him? You already own the money. Just say thank you for your services, man.
May 1st, do you think Brandon Pfaadt's up?
If Bumgarner's that bad, then yeah. So let's and then you've got is Nelson that bad that gets optioned? I think between those two, May 1st sounds reasonable. Yeah.
I think there's a really good path for him to be back. And NFBC drafts since March 1st and Draft Champions, he still does have a 328 ADP, a high of 268. That's going to have fallen more just due to him being optioned. Right. But I think you should keep him on
one of the better prospects that should pitch in the big leagues this year, should have innings. So
yeah, get real innings.
He should be drafted in Draft Champions.
Christian Encarnacion-Strand. Of course, I come on here and talk about how I think he's going to break camp. He could, and the Reds go, they just cut it right.
I think there was like an awkward thing where we recorded, and by the time that we published, he's been sent down.
Yeah, but if people don't know too, like I'm usually a very timely person. We are just in this space where we'll do the show. I go out to a camp, I come back, and I kind of finish up. And you're 100% right. And I was like, Razzle. I was like a old Looney Tunes cartoon. Razzle. I just wanted to make the cuts on it. This is after Encarnacion-Strand hit 577 in spring. 4 homers, 13 RBIs. He had 15 hits in 26 at bats. It's absurd what he did, but it just clearly showed you there was nothing that he could do because he did it. So they had made up their mind. The bigger question, though, to me kind of sits at, this is a guy that showed he was ready. He dominated at, a spring high level with the majors guys. And this is a very injury prone team. And you hate to look at Joey Votto, but Joey Votto coming back is perpetually injured. And one injury, Christian Encarnacion-Strand is one injury away from being back on this roster, I believe. But he's optioned. Do you count him out for the rest of the year?
No, I do not. I think one of the reasons that he is down is because Spencer Steer is also having a good spring. And I think that this is a team that is trying to figure out who's here for the short term, who can we pump up for trade value, cough, cough, Will Myers, who's here for the long term. I actually should maybe throw Jonathan India into that cough actually, because they have a ton of second basemen. They keep drafting second basemen. Jonathan India is aware of the situation, but and who's here for the long term. So I think they want to know, is Spencer Steer a starter in long term, utility guy? What is his natural position? And so Steer is making the team. Kevin Newman is probably the best combination of offense and defense right now at shortstop, but he's a bit of a placeholder. So I expect him to lose his job at some point this season. Oh God, that's so rude. Please, I hope Kevin Newman don't listen to this podcast. And then there's something's going to open up, I think, in the outfield. Either they trade away Will Myers, after he reestablishes some value. Nick Salzell gets injured. Will Benson, Stuart Fairchild, Jake Fraley, TJ Friedel. They're going to sort through those guys, right? And when Farhan Zaidi took over the Giants at the very beginning, they had this whole thing where they gave everybody like 3 weeks. They had like Connor Joe, like that's how they found Mike Yastrzemski. They basically just did a waiver claim, tried the guy for 3 weeks in the major leagues, and if he didn't do anything in 3 weeks, I mean, that's how it was. That's why Connor Joe was a Giant for 3 weeks, and then he's ended up in other places. So I don't know that the Reds will move that fast, but I would expect that everybody from Fairchild, Benson, Fraley, and Friedel, everybody gets some burn, and they kind of sort through those. Friedel and Fraley, I think, are my favorites out of them. But you could have Friedel, Fraley, and Myers in that outfield and still have an opportunity for Encarnacion-Strand to come up. So that's the soft places, or the corner outfield, first base, DH, third base, if Steer goes somewhere else. So there's definitely opportunities. I'm not sure. I can't pinpoint one person to be like, he's going to take this job. But there is enough softness in that outfield depth chart. And then Votto, like, could he be traded in the last year of his deal to a contender, and then Encarnacion-Strand comes up for first? That's also a possibility.
Yeah, and that's why I would not count him out. Number 3 on this list, actually someone that you spoke to, you have some anecdotal stuff, was Addison Barger with the Toronto Blue Jays, who Barger's really interesting. He was out here in the AFL, had a phenomenal year last year. It's pretty low in spring training or in AFL, but ended up hitting 294 with a homer, had 10 hits this spring. And I think there was just some thought with people that he might be able to break camp, sticking around for a little bit, but he's been optioned. Barger was just sent down like a day or two ago, but should we be counting him out for the short term?
It's probably a bad pick, but I took him in AL labor in my last reserve spot. I'm just a little bit excited about a guy that has fairly massive pull power. He's also just a poop brick house physically. That's one of the things that people just say, oh, that dude is yoked. That's so he kind of gives off that impression that he has a major league body already. He's got some interesting fluctuating strikeout and walk rates, but I think, that's what I asked him about. I said, your walk rates have generally improved a little bit with each level as you've gone up. What's that about? And he's like, well, the umpires are improving, and the pitchers have more command at every level. And so, there's just, it's a little bit more obvious what to do. And that reminds me of what Matt Mervis said at the Arizona Fall League. He said that sometimes he'll look at the lineup sheet tonight, see who the umpire is, and know he has to swing. And I, in fact, told Barger that anecdote, and he laughed and he said, yeah, that's about it. So I think he probably has a pretty good natural eye, and he wanted to establish his power and show everybody in the organization what his power is like. And the last bit that I have on him is that he wasn't necessarily untouchable, but he wasn't really available in trade talks last year. So this is someone I think that internally the Blue Jays have circled. And I think with the sort of Whit Merrifield, Santiago Espinal situation at second, that's where I think opportunity lies for Barger this year. Because Espinal is fine, but he's also a righty that has played better against lefties, which, I mean, duh, that's how platoon splits work. But, against against righties, he has a 91 WRC plus, and his defense is okay. It's good, but it's not so standout. Anyway, long story short, I think that Espinal could be headed towards short side platoon / utility duty. And Whit Merrifield is just one of these players that it's not, he's 34 years old. He's declining ability at the plate. And he also plays the outfield. So there's a couple situations there where maybe where Merrifield is needed in center, where they have Kevin Kiermaier and Dalton Varsho, you know, or, you know, in left where it's Varsho and Merrifield, you know. So like what if Merrifield is needed in the outfield? Espinal is playing to utility level. Barger
or Christian Encarnacion-Strand? Which would you rather take?
Who comes up first?
Yeah.
I think that the pathway is clearer for Barger.
Okay. That would be the bet.
But the team is also better. Man, I'm such a waffler.
You're waffling a little bit.
I'm waffling. All right. I'm going to go with Barger. You know why? Because I think the Reds have a lot more sorting to do. They're going to try all those guys, and that might take time. Whereas the Jays, you know, it might become really obvious quickly that they want Espinal to be utility and Merrifield in the outfield.
See, it's interesting because I think the path is a lot clearer with the Reds right now. But to your point, they're experimenting with a lot of things. If he can crack that, if Barger can crack that with the Blue Jays, it really opens up. Another Blue Jay note just to throw out there, we've been talking about him recently. Ricky Tiedemann was one of those players we were thinking could potentially break camp. He had had a little bit of an injury setback, but he recently, I think it's in spring, 3 innings, 4 strikeouts, but he continues to throw. He's scheduled to throw a side session, which will be his second after he was shut down with that shoulder soreness. If people are wondering what's going on with him, not, you know, this isn't like in the optioned area, but this is just another piece. All right. One other guy.
Well, I did talk to him too.
Okay.
And I don't know what's super interesting here, but it is interesting generally that velo has been good for him. And he said that he actually gets more ride. He has this one of these weird arm slots where he's out to the side, but he gets decent ride, which is why Stuff Plus loves him, why people love him. And he said that he actually, with more velo comes more ride. So that could be, you could read that either way. I mean, that's what if he loses some velo? Does he lose ride and become, you know, much less interesting overall? The Blue Jays do not have a great track record with creating velo with their younger guys. Tiedemann is the one standout there. So I don't know. I am excited about him though, because in terms of Stuff Plus, that sort of low arm slot with ride is something that really befuddles hitters, and that could be he could be a really exciting guy that hits the ground running. And the Blue Jays obviously need him. Nate Pearson is going to be a 2-inning guy this year, and so Nate Pearson shouldn't necessarily be on that starting pitcher depth chart. So what you've got behind Yusei Kikuchi, who has shown zero command of his fastball this spring, from my eye and from the numbers, behind him you got Mitch White, who is, I think, a high floor but low ceiling type pitcher. And then you've got Ricky Tiedemann. So until Ryu's healthy, if there's any injury plus Kikuchi regression, Tiedemann could be up pretty quickly.
Be interesting too. I think Ryu said July is the time. It'd be fascinating to see Pearson and Tiedemann do kind of like a piggyback together and become one starter. You two become one starter. Maybe Pearson pitches the first 2 innings as an opener, and then Tiedemann comes in and pitches the next 5 or whatnot, and then you put it over to the bullpen. Interesting experiment if they do it, but he's got to get past the shoulder soreness, which is, you know, a death sentence sometimes, or at least it's a big hold our breath moment for starting pitchers. Exactly. The other last one in the option, but not counted out, and then we got some camp surprises we're going to burn through, was Kyle Manzardo. I don't know how much. I felt like the fantasy community had really pushed Manzardo up more, but he had a really good spring. Hit 333, 2 homers, 9 RBI in 27 at bats. We never saw it come to, but he told me about a couple months ago or whatever it was that they had also asked him to pick up a third base glove, which told me he was never going to break camp and this is never going to be a thing. But I haven't seen him do it, and I don't know if he did it on any backfields. I'd be very curious to see if he does it in the spring. Option, but not counted out, is Kyle Manzardo a better option than Encarnacion-Strand and Barger, or is he the furthest away from this group that was just recently optioned?
I think he's the furthest away. I mean, all the stuff that we talked about with, controlling a roster and, not losing anything off the roster. The Rays are like hyper focused on that. They do not want to lose any source of value off their prospect. They probably agonize over every release they've seen it coming for 14 months. You know what I mean? Like, they've got a guy circled on this roster they don't want to release, that they're afraid of releasing, that they don't want to release until they really, really have to. I don't know who it is, but they're trying so hard. Maybe it's Vidal Brujan, right? And they're going to give Vidal Brujan as many chances as they can before they give up that roster spot and give up that potential, because they would hate to see Vidal Brujan get picked up by it's just an example. But for example, Luke Raley is making this Rays team because he's out of options, not necessarily because Kyle Manzardo was worse than him. And so once you have Raley on that roster, if Raley, who was having a pretty good spring, if Raley just shows his worth, then they're going to say, we've created some value. We have a guy on our roster that we now control for so many years. And, he plays first base. And, Manzardo plays there. So, well, get that third base glove, Manzardo, and and show your ability to move around the dime. So, yes, there are some, like Vidal Brujan has not really shown the power that it requires to be an everyday regular, I think. And everyone talks about Jonathan Aranda's bricks for gloves. Paredes himself does not have a sterling defensive defensive reputation. So there are ways that this can sort out, but it's not like Manzardo is going to play better defense at third than Paredes.
And
right, I doubt it.
No, I don't. I mean, Manzardo is better athletically than people are giving him credit for. Like he said, he had told me that they wanted to really draft him as a second baseman, and they're like, no. But we'll have to see how it goes. Manzardo himself said that he didn't think it was going to become anything. Not that he couldn't do it. He just didn't think it would become anything. But I also think it shows more of the long-term plan. But he did succeed again, and he did keep rolling, which was a really good spring.
And there's probably an opening at DH, because Harold Ramirez is probably actually the guy they have circled.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And Manzardo's bat is up. Yeah, it does. It does.
Harold Ramirez is the guy. And because Harold Ramirez is the guy that they claimed. And so Ramirez had like a bit of a resurgence with the Rays where, he had his best season with them. He'd been below average with the bat and below average defensively with everybody else. He'd been below replacement until he got to Tampa.
Yeah.
And in Tampa, it was almost all BABIP fueled. I'm sure if I really poke under the hood, I can see some sort of selection, difference, or, he hit more line drives, but line drives are not very sticky year to year. He pulled more balls. Maybe they gave him the same approach they gave Paredes, where they said, just look at high and tight and pull those balls and you'll do much better. He's a borderline guy. I mean, he was a 1-win guy last year, and he's projected for less than a win this year. And 1-win guys don't keep Kyle Manzardo's down. So if Harold Ramirez is struggling, I could see Manzardo coming up. But I also just think they slow play guys. Just remember how they slow played Nate Lowe forever.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Now, option playing in spring is a little indifferent, so don't get caught up on this, because this next section is just about guys that are still in camp. But know that any given day they can call a guy up to play in a spring training game and stuff like that, and that happens from time to time. But these are some real big surprises in camp that have been hanging around, getting a lot of playing time. First up was Gavin Stone, who pitched the other day, and he looked phenomenal. Changeup was on point. I believe he had 8 strikeouts in 3 innings pitched so far. He has 14 strikeouts in 6 2/3 inning pitched so far. No runs and a 1 whip. He has maybe had the best pitching spring of anybody, and he kind of has been an afterthought because he's a Dodger. And how much room do they actually have with anybody? Because they also have a guy in Bobby Miller, and he's still hanging around. And he just, like I said, pitched 3 innings in a game. I believe it was yesterday as we're recording this. So hanging around. Gavin Stone. What do we have out of Gavin Stone right now for you?
Yeah, I think the WBC is throwing a wrench into some of these names that we're going to talk about. Maybe just because Julio Urias is out of town for the WBC or was, maybe just because Tony Gonsolin's got the ankle injury. Maybe that's the only reason why Gavin Stone is around. But I enjoy this because I think it shows something that I believe, which is I have Gavin Stone ahead of Michael Grove and Bobby Miller. And I like him better than Ryan Pepio too. So I don't know if I have him ahead of Pepio, because Pepio has been working on changing his pitching mix to improve his command, and that is a way you can improve your command. So I could see Pepio still being the number 6 starter, but I think for me personally, Gavin Stone is the 7th starter, and he has as much upside, maybe more than any of Pepio, Grove, and Bobby Miller. So I'm glad that he's been shoving. I think that this is proving sort of what my bias is, that he's the best of the 4.
Yeah, and he seems like, just the way that changeup was dipping, that he was complimenting with the fastball. I was actually trying to pull up, see if I could find it real quick.
He's a really nice changeup.
Yeah, I mean, the changeup looked like absolutely on point. One of those spring starts that you go back to, and
I think it's a splitter, but yeah, I mean, whatever, same thing.
Yeah, and I think they were just calling it that. But an interesting thing too is I saw multiple people. There's this big uptrend in Twitter yesterday about like who the next Spencer Strider was, and people were throwing out names. Brandon Pfaadt was someone that got thrown out, but Gavin Stone was one of those.
It's Hunter Green.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think what they were talking about, though, was
you're talking about fastball slider to 50-50 and
no, they were talking about obscurity of like a guy that you didn't quite know where they were. Yeah, and then just explodes on the scene. I think it was Scott White at CBS was kind of anointing. Maybe it was Gavin Stone was out there. I thought that was an interesting context because I don't know if Stone, like Spencer Strider definitely was a little bit more of like, ooh, is he going to be a reliever? And I don't know that guys like Gavin Stone and Brandon Pfaadt are in
Pepio could do that.
Pepio's a good one. That's a really good one.
Because he actually fits everyone says he should be a reliever. But if this command improvement sticks, he could definitely be a starter, and he has good stuff. So
okay, Bryce Miller is another one who I'm obviously just a huge fan of. Bryce Miller,
he's the Mariner, right?
Mariner, 2 ERA, 9 strikeouts in 9 innings. He's the guy I talked to in very early spring that said he adjusted his slider into 2 parts where he now throws 2 sliders. One's a sweeper, one's a gyro. It's a great fastball.
It's sweeping the nation. The trend that's sweeping the nation. That's what Drew Rasmussen is doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he said. That was what he said to me is because I said, because he had just struck out Tom Murphy, and I was like, that's a crazy slider. He's like, it's actually throwing 2 now. And he said that was the trend. He said it's actually what a lot of guys are doing right now, and that was his adjustment. And I told you,
gyro gives you something you can command against opposite-handed guys. The sweeper gives you something that you can get same-handed guys out with.
What was interesting, though, and I mentioned this a couple weeks back, so apologies to anyone hearing it, was he told me the opposite, is he felt he could command his sweeper, and he didn't have the command of the gyro yet. So I thought that was really fascinating.
That's interesting because the generally you would say you can't command the pitch with more movement, and you can command the pitch with less movement. That's just a general thing.
They're interviewed about him, and Scott Service essentially acknowledge he's a starting pitcher. Like, this is his role. They don't see him in the bullpen because they believe his stuff. They're very impressed. His stuff is a starting pitcher, a little bit of an older guy. The question is like, where is there room in this rotation, and how can he get there? But he's still kicking around, and there's still this little thought process that he could break camp. So any thoughts on Bryce Miller?
Oh, really? There's some thought. I mean, he's still around. That is interesting. I guess I'm circling Marco Gonzalez's name. What are his numbers this spring? Marco Gonzalez was worth 0.1 WAR last year.
Is that a guy you put in?
You know that oof gif?
Yeah, yeah, oof, yeah, the oof.
Is it like a soccer coach or something?
Yeah, that's actually that's like a top 5 of all of them. Yeah, that's what
the
this
oof
was.
Meter is high.
Okay, so what team gives up on their fractional replacement level pitcher first? Diamondbacks, Madison, or Mariners with Marco?
Mariners, because they have to win this year. Also, they have a club option. I doubt they're actually gonna do that.
What on Marco?
Yeah, they have 7.5 million is not a lot. But I think you could convert Marco to a 6 starter who's on the roster. You know what I mean? That can come in. I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think
I
you
don't think
break
it's
camp
gonna.
with Marco Gonzalez as your 5, and if there's an injury, maybe Miller hops up against up on top of Flexen. Flexen's stuff played up in the bullpen, and I think he actually could be their next Eric Swanson. And so, you've got how many good starting pitchers, like how many mediocre, bad starting pitchers that were young that converted over to relief became great. It's like, I think that's the similarity for me for Swanson and Flexen. And so if he hops over Flexen, he's the number 6 starter, probably. Yeah, he's probably ahead of Emerson Hancock because he's still in camp. So
There's no doubt.
I think they hold him in camp until they break camp. If there's no injuries, Marco Gonzalez is number 5. If Marco Gonzalez pitches more like he did last year and less like his 1-win projection, which comes from the bat and is the only one that's over 1 win. If he pitches to that number, then maybe they keep him. If he pitches much worse, it is weird. It is maybe WAR is not capturing something with him, because Marco Gonzalez has basically had a 4 ERA now for 5 straight years. And he went in those 5 years from being a 3 WAR pitcher to being a 0 WAR pitcher. So that's an interesting thing where you're just looking at the WAR and looking at the ERA and something is amiss. But
I wonder if there's anyone else like that. That sounds like something your smart brain would be able to make a great article out of.
I mean,
I
just looking, I can see that like he's been giving up more homers, but less balls in play. And so the projection systems see that and say, well, the balls in play are going to be, go to 300 and the homers are going to stay high. So that's why basically no projection system likes him. But if he's figured out something where he can have like a 250, 260 BABIP and 1.5 homers per 9, then he might have a 4 ERA again.
One other note on Bryce Miller, 2021, he pitched 9 innings. This past year, they pushed him to 133 innings. He pitched across 3 levels. He did only get to AA, which is something to consider with them pushing, but I do believe he is one
I bet
of the
you
first guys up.
He spends a month pitching 3 and 4 innings. Spends the first month of the season pitching like 3 or 4 innings to start, and then has a 5-inning start like first week of May, and he's up in May.
That would be interesting. Be on the lookout for that. One last guy on this, and then I'll just throw a couple little burners at you. You and I were talking about this off air. Ben Joyce with a lot of the Angels. Ben Joyce is fascinating. If you guys have paid attention to him, he was drafted in last year's draft class. He would be a first year, an FYPD, if you will. 5 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, no earned runs given up. And he's famously known as the guy that hit 104 at Tennessee last year. And the Angels overall are really weird with what they've been doing. But this is a guy that is still sitting in camp, is a relief-only arm who is probably one of the biggest power fastballs in baseball, has had a fantastic spring. Does Ben Joyce break camp with the Angels?
Yes.
Boom. He breaks camp. Is he
Done.
the closer? Is he the
it.
closer? Let's go next level. Is he the closer, Eno?
No, not right away. I mean, you're asking a lot of a guy who just has a handful of AA innings to just step in and take a job from a guy they signed to be the closer, gave him major league money. But I do think by the end of the season, Joyce could be the closer. One thing that I don't know offhand, we're thinking about altitude adjusting stuff plus, because altitude changes the shape of pitches. And so Estevez could have had a better stuff plus than he did. And so, when we look at something like my pitcher ranks and the projections that we got through stuff plus. So PPERA time, we look at Estevez through that lens, it says a 4.28 ERA. But what if his stuff plus number has been affected by altitude and is not the correct number? Because this says 104. What if he's actually a 108 guy or a 110? That would get that ERA under 4. Either way, we might be talking about, he actually should have a 3.9 ERA projection. That seems gettable. So I've been looking for somebody in this bullpen that I could, in early drafts, I had Zach Weiss, who had the best stuff plus in the bullpen last year. He's still a possibility. I don't think Aaron Loop, the lefty, or Quijada, I don't think either of those guys really have the closer stuff that I'm looking for. Ben Joyce has it. So I'm going to put him ahead of Zach Weiss as the number one sleeper in this bullpen. And I think he makes the team because this team is, there it's all hands on deck time. And you had a little nugget about some other player in their minor league system, but just let me put it this way, and then you've got supporting evidence that's even better than Ben Joyce. This team needs to win. Mike Trout may hit 60 homers this year because he says, I need to convince Shohei Ohtani to stay here. So Mike Trout may have an amazing season. And if Mike Trout feels that way, then his general manager feels that way, where he's like, if you are shoving in camp, I need you. And that's probably goes up and down the organization. So what was the example you had?
Well, the one was Zach Neto, however you want to say. I'd say Neto, was their number one draft pick in this class, and they pushed him straight to Double-A. They went to Double-A, like out of all of the shoot, and over on the backfields, he's already with the Triple-A team. He played against the Triple-A Diamondbacks on the minor league games. They need a shortstop. His bat is live, and they are already pushing him. So if you're going to start out the year at Triple-A, there's something about the Angels' development that hasn't been working, and they might just be pushing these guys. These are two guys out of this draft class that are ready to go. They're both college, college arm, college bat that are in there. But
why waste them if you were trying to convince Ohtani to stay, or you're trying to win this year?
Yeah, get your guys there. So I think Ben Joyce is a really fascinating one, and be on the lookout for him because he has not left. Just throwing out some other guys were Heston Kjerstad, who I really like, hitting 400, 4 homers so far in spring.
Why do you think he's
out there
in camp?
I think it's at bats. I think mainly he missed so much time,
they just want to see him against top at bats. I mean, they that's why they had him in the fall league. I mean, he really stood out in the fall league, didn't he?
MVP.
Wasn't he the runner up in the home run derby?
Yeah, and he won the MVP of the AFL as well.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, he looked amazing down there, and
they're working him at first in spring as well, so they're giving him some more flexibility. But yeah, It is interesting because they're not they don't have guys, I don't think, missing a whole bunch of Santander, but like outside of that, who's missing from them? And he's still sitting around. He just hit a homer, I think, yesterday. So Kjerstad,
they're actually going to start getting crowded, dude. I mean,
they already are.
Maybe they're going to trade Santander or Hayes, because there's Stowers and Colton Cowser are already coming up after them. And then you want to probably play Kjerstad in the outfield, unless they're going to trade Mountcastle. I wonder if they will trade a bat soon.
Well, there seems to be a bat
they're getting loaded. Dude, buy Orioles futures.
Oh, absolutely. Westberg, Norby. I mean, obviously Gunnar is out there. The pitching, they are.
I like Gunnar better than some people I think Gunnar did everything you asked from him, and I think he could be a shortstop. But is Westberg a better defensive shortstop?
I think a
Joey Ortiz too.
Yeah, he played with Justin Foscue, and I think they view him as a little bit better. But that infield could be, Norby, Westberg. They just had a great draft class. Judd Fabian, they picked up Dylan Beavers at Oregon State. They are Baltimore futures are looking very, very good. Two other hitters, Zach Veen, still around in camp, 271. He has now 8 stolen bases. I know you don't like him as much.
That was a pre-Profar thing. I think that's another one that Profar just shot in the foot.
Yep, 100%. And I briefly brought him up. Justin Durden with the Astros. We were talking about Hensley at second base, but Justin Durden, a little bit of an older guy at AAA, is still sitting around there. And with like Brantley maybe going on an IL stint or whatever, 350, 2 homers, a stolen base, and a 7 for 20 in camp, and might be a sneaky guy that is going to break camp with this team. Someone that no one's looking at, but he is still floating around. And I'm trying to think of who they're missing right now. I just don't know who.
This is his make or break year 2. He's Rule 5 eligible this December.
Yeah, I think he's 26. I think 25 or 26. So this is like, are you quad? This is very Christian Walker to me ish, like a very older guy who's been sitting around who needs to make that push, and he's going to get an opportunity. That might be a very, very.
They're going to use all 3 of his options this year. Is my prediction. He's going to be a guy who's up and down all 3 times.
He'll be the Olivares. Last thing was, I just thought this was interesting. Jackson Merrill, who I believe was just sent down, had 8 hits in spring. Bob Melvin said that he's going to be a quick mover. He said, where, here, at what point in time, I don't know. We got a lot of guys covering the infield positions, but When you're that good, you find a way. So I expect him to really be a quick mover.
A lot of people have him circled as a big mover on prospect list. Had he already moved on prospect lists?
Yeah, he'd made a big move this offseason. He was the youngest guy in the AFL. He looked phenomenal. I mean, I have a show, my Prospect One show. I just did bold predictions. Someone came on. I'm trying to remember who. Well, I think it was. It might have been James Anderson. Said that he'll be the #1 prospect by season's end in baseball.
Wow.
Would be Jackson Merrill. So that's a big one. Jackson Merrill moving up, but he might not make it because there might be major league time coming. So, that is Project Prospect, talking all the guys, lots of stuff, and it's going to get even more interesting as the season goes on. Make sure you guys check us out over at theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels so you can sign up, get access to everything that they've got going on, get in on the app, get in on the articles, get in on the rankings and the draft kit so you can prep for this final weekend because, you have, is it the main event on Sunday?
I'm not going to say.
Okay. There's a draft that might be coming up. I don't know when it's happening. There are drafts. There's big drafts that are coming up that maybe we'll.
And I have a co-owner, so you can't find me.
Okay, good. We don't know. We don't know when it'll be. There's one that's happening. So big drafts, but make sure you're prepped. Doesn't need to be because he's doing the draft prep. So that's going to do it. Find me on Twitter, Is It the Welsh? Find Eno at Eno Saris. And we'll talk to you next time right here on Race and Barrels. Bye, friends.
Thanks for listening.